Before we dive into Arc 2, here's a quick recap of where we left off. In Arc 1, Premonition and Escape, Elias and Marin arrived at what was supposed to be a safe house, but strange symbols, static visions, and a creeping presence, Theta, began to fracture Elias's sense. They discovered a sealed box, a dispersal device in the walls, and fled just moments before a silent explosion. In the chaos, they found Corey, a boy whose quiet demeanor masked something deeper, took refuge with an old man named Wally. We ended the arc with Elias seeing Theta in broad daylight, and for the first time admitting the visions were real. That sets the stage for everything you're about to hear in Arc 2.
Log initiated. Transmission clean. Static harmonized.
If you're hearing this, you cracked the memory shell. That means you're no longer aligned with the global pattern. That means something inside you, maybe guilt, maybe grief, still echoes against the signal, and that's good. My name is Wally Grimsby. They used to call me Wally the Ghost, behind the observation glass. I helped design the veil. Not the idea. That came from men who stopped dreaming. But the structure, the delivery vectors, the feedback loop, the illusion of choice. Back then, I told myself we were preventing collapse, that perfect memories would make for perfect citizens, but I forgot something critical. I forgot that memory is messy for a reason. Pain teaches, love scars, regret binds. When we flattened the curves, when we smoothed the friction, we stopped being real.
Chapter 11. Ashes in the Wind. The walk back to the grave was long and wordless. Ash drifted in the branches, falling like snow that had lost its purpose. The path was soft with silence. Even the trees felt dimmed, like the forest itself had agreed not to speak. They stopped at the edge of the field. The grave was as they left it, rough stone marker intact, soil undisturbed. But this time, there was no urgency, no threat behind them, just grief, given room to breathe. Corey clutched a small bundle of wildflowers Marin had picked along the trail, misshapen things, half singed by the toxins, their petals curling inward. Still, he placed them at the base of the marker, with the care of someone twice his age. Marin knelt beside him, wrapping an arm around his narrow shoulders. "She knew you made it," she said. "You did what she asked." Corey didn't cry, but he leaned into her side and didn't let go. A few paces back, Elias stood with arms folded, the weight of something unnameable gathering behind his ribs. The scene before him felt distant, like watching a memory he wasn't sure was his. Grief, but shaped into someone else's silhouette. Then, between two trees, half lit, half ghosted, he saw it. Theta. The edges of its body flickered with static. Its dark eyes shimmered, not in malice, but in mourning. It didn't move. It didn't speak. It simply raised one arm, slowly, precisely, and pointed again. Not at Elias, at Corey, a gesture like marking a constellation in the sky. Not blame, not threat, just inevitability. Elias's breath hitched, and then it was gone. Back at the cabin, Wally tore through a rusted file crate, muttering under his breath. Sheets of brittle paper spilled across the floor, old test logs, half-faded schematics, overlays of signal fields. "Didn't say it earlier," he said, lighting a cigarette with a shaky hand, "because I wasn't sure. But after what you saw today, I think we've got another variable." Elias looked up from his seat, wary. "Meaning?" Wally's eyes shifted toward the hallway, toward the room where Corey had gone quiet again. "The kid's wrong," he said. "Vitals are too clean. No adrenaline spikes. No panic reflex. Not for someone his age." Marin stood from where she'd been tracing one of Corey's sketches. "He's in shock." "Maybe, or maybe," Wally said, tapping the side of his head. "He's like you." Elias tensed. Wally didn't look at him when he said it. "A receiver." "I don't know that term," Elias said. "You wouldn't. They scrubbed the terminology when Phase 1 fell apart. Receivers were subjects who could read emotional bleed, pull signal residue from memory-saturated environments. Trauma anchors. Ghost code, we called it." He lifted a folder and let it drop to the floor with a flat thud. "Most candidates fractured. But you didn't just survive. You mirrored." Marin took a slow breath. "You think Corey was part of this?" "I think he still is," Wally said. "And if Theta's pointing to him, it's not random. Constructs don't fixate without feedback." At that moment, Corey stepped into the room. He didn't speak. He simply held up a new drawing. Elias took it from his hand. 3 figures stood in front of a field, just like today. Behind them, a 4th shape hovered near the tree line. Hollow eyes, open mouth, hand raised. "You drew this today?" Elias asked. Corey nodded. Marin leaned closer. "He's seeing it too." Wally turned back to the crate and pulled something from the bottom. A warped photo, the ink half-faded, edges curling. He passed it to Marin. The image showed a young boy, barefoot in a white clinical room. His palms were pressed against a glass wall. Wires trailed from his temples like spider threads. His eyes were wide, distant. Marin stared. "It's him," she said. "It's Elias." Wally nodded. "Taken during his second immersion. We kept it, because he was the only one who didn't break." Elias looked at the photo and said nothing. But deep inside, a fracture he hadn't known was there had just begun to widen. Chapter 12. The Threshold. The city waited ahead like a wound that refused to close. They reached the outskirts by dusk, where the trees fell away and broken pavement carved into the landscape like surgical cuts. Rusted vehicles slumped in silence. Ivy pushed through concrete like veins. But there were no people. No motion in the windows. No noise in the streets. Just stillness, as if the city had breathed in once and forgot how to exhale. "This is wrong," Marin said, eyes scanning the empty buildings. "Even in evacuations, you hear something. Birds, wind, life." Wally adjusted the scanner clipped to his belt. The screen pulsed with erratic readings. "This area hosted early trials," he said. "Broadcast loops, neural field tests. They didn't just clear it. They scrubbed it." They passed under a checkpoint archway, its metal gate hanging askew. A cracked display blinked overhead, a broken welcome, flickering with uneven rhythm. WELCMEHOME. The letters trembled, a few frames missing, like the sign itself was stuttering through a memory. "That's not a message," Elias said. "It's a smirk." No one corrected him, because they all felt it. Marin activated her signal reader, fingers quick but steady. A soft pinging began to rise and fall like a dying heartbeat. "No surface toxins," she said, "but the air's bleeding. Layered frequencies. Something's fractured out here. It's not just static." Wally nodded, lips tight. "The edge of the threshold. Think of it like a psychic perimeter. Outside, your memories are yours. Inside," he exhaled, "they get overwritten." Elias said nothing, but his eyes tracked the street ahead. And there, between 2 buildings, a flicker. Something leaning, watching, gone, again. Another, this time by the crumpled bus stop. Gone. Not people, he thought. Not ghosts, either. Just residue. In the cart behind them, Corey stirred, still wrapped in the old blanket, sweat purling at his temples. His mouth moved, murmuring, detached from waking. Marin was at his side in seconds, brushing damp hair from his forehead. "Corey," she said, "you're safe now." But the words weren't for her. "He walks beneath the threshold," Corey said. "He's almost through." Burn the veil. Then, stillness. Elias crouched beside them, watching Corey's eyes dart behind their lids. He's repeating, not dreaming, receiving. Wally's voice came low from the doorway. "Exactly." They found shelter 2 blocks in, a long-abandoned daycare center, boards half-torn from the windows, walls still bearing the ghosts of crayon suns and chalky blue skies. Inside, the rooms felt off-kilter, familiar shapes twisted by neglect. Marin resealed the air vents. Corey curled up in the nap room, drawing in silence. Elias lingered near the front glass, one hand resting on the edge of a dusty play table. Outside, nothing. No headlights, no birds, no voices from behind curtains, just static in the soul of the place, and a question written in the silence. What happens when you go one step further? Elias didn't speak it aloud, but in the distance, something shifted, like the city had just opened one eye. Chapter 13. Dead Channels. Morning broke, but the light felt off, blunt, weightless, like the sun had been reconstructed from memory, but the colors came back wrong. The air had shifted, not heavier, intentional. They moved through the inner ring of the city, weaving between buildings that looked too perfect. Cafes still had half-full cups on tables, newspapers folded on benches. A child's tricycle leaned against a fire hydrant, but no children, no laughter, no life in the noise, just movement, and the people. They walked in perfect rhythm, uniform spacing, no contact. Their heads angled just off-center, never looking directly at anything. They made slow, looping paths through intersections, paused at glowing glass panels embedded in building walls, then resumed like they had always done so. No words, no acknowledgement, just programming. "They're alive," Marin said, "but they're not present." Wally checked his wrist rig. The waveform display pulsed with precise, looping rhythm. Neural feedback flat. Subconscious behaviors are syncing. This isn't surveillance. It's reinforcement. Grid conditioning. Live. They stopped at a corner. 3 people stood beneath a mounted screen, arranged in a perfect triangle. Their heads tilted toward the display, faces bathed in soft blue light. A woman's voice, smooth, maternal, played beneath a melody that looped without crescendo. "Breathe in. The veil protects. Breathe out. You are not alone." Elias watched the screen, the colors blurred. The transitions between images stuttered, and in one flicker, he saw it. The gremlin, a ghost layer in the static, its silhouette spliced into the pattern for less than a heartbeat, eyes glowing, head tilted in empathy or warning, gone, but not imagined. "Did you see that?" Elias said, voice tight. Wally glanced over. "See what?" "Never mind." He stepped back into the shade of a recessed doorway. The blood in his ears wasn't just adrenaline. It was frequency. They ducked into a narrow alleyway, walls sweating moisture that didn't belong to the season. Wally knelt beneath a broken awning and unpacked a handheld rig, jury-rigged antennae, rusted dials, copper tubing alive with current, whispering under his touch. "Perimeter watch," he said. "This'll only take a second." Static hissed. The frequency cracked like radio bones. Then the pulses came, measured, rhythmic. "What are you hearing?" Marin asked. Sub-frequency layer, Wally said. Buried beneath the propaganda loops. No one's supposed to hear it. He turned a dial, filtering the sound through a snapped headset. Then his breath caught. It's broadcasting identity tags. Elias stepped closer. What kind of tags? Early trial markers, designations from Phase 1. It's recalling them, naming them. He turned. His face had gone pale. Yours is in there. Marin's voice sharpened. You're saying this whole city is built to re-trigger people? Not just trigger. Reactivate. It's a signal hive. They're not suppressing behavior. They're rewriting it. A cold wind moved through the alley, but nothing stirred above. Behind them, Corey stopped walking. He stared across the empty street, at a building with shattered windows and a scorched awning. I know this place, Corey said. Elias turned. What did you say? Corey blinked. A moment of static passed through his body, like memory shaking loose. The inside, the hallway, beds. I saw it when I was small, or maybe it was after I closed my eyes. Wally's face went rigid. That's a Phase 2 broadcast site, he said. They scrubbed it after the last field collapse. Not well enough, Marin replied, stepping in front of Corey, shielding him instinctively. Because now the illusion cracked, clean, like glass. This city hadn't been abandoned. It had been programmed, not to be forgotten, but to remember them. Chapter 14, Signal Flare.
Before we dive deeper into today's episode, I want to share something exciting with you, ElevenLabs. If you've ever wanted to bring your projects to life with stunning, lifelike voice synthesis, this is the tool for you. Let me give you a quick walkthrough of what ElevenLabs can do and why it's a game changer. First up, their speech generation from text feature. It's incredibly easy to use. Just enter any text into the speech synthesis tool, whether it's a video script, an article, or even a poem. Here's a sample to inspire you. Oh, dear user, with ElevenLabs, you'll find a world of voices, both gentle and kind. Text turned to speech, in languages wide, where lifelike emotions gracefully reside. Pretty amazing, right? Next, there's the voice library, a treasure trove of hundreds of voices, from all genders, ages, and accents. You can filter to find the perfect voice that matches your vision. Whether you're working on a podcast, an audiobook, or any creative project, ElevenLabs has you covered. And my personal favorite, dubbing in multiple languages. Just paste a YouTube video link, choose your target language, and let ElevenLabs handle the rest. It translates and dubs seamlessly, preserving the original tone and style. Curious to give it a try? Use our exclusive affiliate link, 24 Echoes, at try.elevenlabs.io/24echoes to explore all the possibilities ElevenLabs has to offer. With tools like these, the only limit is your imagination. Now, let's get back to the show.
The daycare shelter had gone silent, but not quiet. A low pulse stirred the walls, like the space itself remembered what it had been built to contain. The silence was brittle, stretched too thin. Marin sat cross-legged beneath a mural of faded sunflowers, her portable terminal propped on her knees. The screen pulsed with soft red waves, measured, precise. Every 16 minutes, an emergency header blinked across the top, followed by a subtle tremor in the waveform. But something was wrong with the rhythm. These alerts aren't warnings, she said, voice low. They're behavioral loops, cadence-linked. The tone mimics a calm response, but masks something deeper, like a metronome for the nervous system. Wally leaned in behind her, squinting at the scrolling code. Patterned reinforcement, he stated. Not to warn, to calibrate. They're embedding compliance into urgency. Classic veil tactic, but scaled. Watch this, Marin said, isolating a signal band. Every loop hits within a 4-frame delta. It's syncing with environmental broadcasts, the ones we saw at the viewing stations. Wally nodded. Primary conditioning band. That's your keystone. Across the room, Corey stirred. Elias caught the motion and moved closer. Hey, kid, you all right? But Corey didn't respond. His fingers clenched into fists, jaw tightening as his breath turned shallow. It was like his body knew something was wrong before his mind did. Then the terminal clicked. Marin had triggered audio playback, just a whisper of tone, a pulse, gentle, measured. Corey screamed. He dropped to his knees, clutching his head like it was splitting from the inside. Shut it off, Elias barked. Marin killed the feed and rushed to him. It's off. You're okay. Breathe. But Corey was still trembling. His eyes were wide, distant, not here. I saw it again, he said. The room, with the lights and the humming. It was red. It was all red. Marin stroked his back. What room, sweetheart? Kids, beds, wires. His voice cracked. They weren't asleep. Their eyes were open. Elias's knees buckled. A pressure flooded the edges of his vision. Not pain, but presence. A pull from inside his mind. He staggered backward, hand bracing against the wall. And suddenly, he wasn't in the daycare anymore. He was there, bathed in crimson light. A room filled with rows of children, strapped into beds. Silent. Breathing. Watching. Their eyes didn't blink. Monitors buzzed overhead, looping in soft pulses. The walls shimmered like they were made of signal. And in the corner, Theta, small, pale, eyes weeping, but wide with fear. It didn't speak. It just stared. And then the world collapsed inward. Elias gasped as he snapped back. Marin was beside him, one hand on his chest. Wally stood over the terminal, jaw tight. You saw it, Wally said. Elias didn't argue, because it hadn't been a hallucination. It had been a recording, played on the inside. This isn't about hiding anymore, Marin said, her voice clear and quiet. If we don't stop this, it spreads. Wally looked at the waveform one last time, then shut the lid. Then we head for central grid. From his place on the floor, Corey looked up. He held half of the blanket he hadn't realized he'd torn in two. His voice was hoarse, but steady. I think I know the way. Chapter 15. The Veiled Gate. The theatre rose like a ruin carved from memory. Its blackened marquee hung crooked over the sidewalk, half the letters peeled away, the others swallowed by soot and time. Behind it, the old arts district sagged in silence, windows blank, alleyways filled with forgotten echoes. They slipped in through a side door warped by heat and weather. It groaned like something breathing. Inside, the dark bloomed thick. The air smelled of velvet rot and scorched wiring. Rows of crimson seats stretched toward a stage cloaked in torn curtains and intermittent light. The floor creaked beneath their feet, old wood remembering old pain. But it wasn't the stage that drew their eyes. It was the walls. Symbols covered them, etched in charcoal, scratched into plaster, burned into paneling with tools or bare hands. Some geometric, spirals intersecting circles, triangles overlapping with glyphs, others childlike, jagged suns, open mouths, staring eyes, and in the center of many, a shape like an open door, with a spiral at its core. Elias stepped forward, heart ticking hard. "These match the ones carved into the box," he said, remembering. "From the attic." "Someone used this place," Marin said, scanning the wall. "A site, or a boundary." Wally touched a jagged spiral scorched into the wood. "Not a boundary, a sandbox. This is where they mapped memory." Backstage, the air changed. The dressing rooms had collapsed inward. Storage crates were rotting, but the monitors, stage cue screens from another era, flickered with faint static, still wired to some surviving current deep in the city. Corey wandered toward one of the consoles. His hand hovered above a cracked display case on the wall. Pinned beneath the glass, a child's drawing, faded, but intact. The door with the spiral. "I've seen this before," he said. "Not here. In my dreams. I'd walk through it. There was a hallway. On the other side, it was always quiet, but I wasn't alone." His voice was so calm, it felt rehearsed. Marin crouched beside him. "Are you sure it was a dream?" He didn't answer. He just traced the spiral in the air, slowly, like remembering how to breathe. Elias stepped back. A flicker caught his eye. One of the monitors, faint, fuzzed, glitched, and there it was. Theta, not whole, not speaking, but present. Its outline trembled within the static, almost folded into itself, like a signal trying to assemble a face. Eyes weeping, mouth parted, it stared without blinking, its outline shifting as though caught in a bad reception loop. One frame, then two, then gone. But not absent. He said it like a breath he didn't mean to release. "It's reaching for us." Wally opened a side panel on the main array, wires coiling inside like veins. "These symbols, they're anchor points," he said. "Part of the early Veil designs, dream-seeded environments. They created artificial landscapes to test how memory and fear could be unlinked. Children were meant to build familiarity, then fracture it." Marin scanned the nearby walls, brow furrowed. "But Corey remembers. He connects to it." "Some of them did," Wally said. "But not all came back normal. Not all came back at all." Later, huddled in the loft above the stage, the group wrapped in layers of fabric scavenged from the old costume racks. Elias sat at the edge of the catwalk. The balcony loomed in front of him, seats yawning into blackness, stage light flickering against a velvet curtain like a dying heart. "What if this isn't just where they ran the tests?" he asked. "What if the place is the test?" No one answered at first. Then Marin looked at Corey. He sat cross-legged beside a torn sketch pad. But he wasn't drawing. He was staring at the blank page. Still, focused, listening. Elias followed his gaze. There was nothing there. But Corey's expression had changed. Calm, almost sad. Recognition, not of the symbols, but of what came after them.
There was a boy, Corey. A quiet one, but sharp as a signal spike. He didn't speak at first, just drew. And when he started humming, the feedback in my bones told me we were late. Elias and the girl, Sophia, she wasn't even part of the system. Born outside, untouched, unprogrammed, and yet they were starting to anchor others, to wake them. By the time we buried the old world, the new one had already begun to wake up, and it didn't want a handler. They'll tell you to forget. They'll whisper your memories aren't yours. But if you still hear me, you're not broken. You're remembering. That's where it begins.
Log ends. File corrupted. 20% data missing.
Chapter 16. Symptom 0. They found her near the lip of the orchestra pit. A collapsed velvet seat had become her nest, torn by time, soaked in ash. Her hair hung in ropes of dirt and silver, her coat stained with blood that had dried long ago. But her eyes, too clear, too still. They didn't tremble. They searched. "Don't move," Marin said, blade raised. Her voice was ice. The woman lifted a trembling hand. "If I wanted to hurt you," she rasped, "I'd have stayed inside the walls." Wally stepped forward, cautious but sure. "Nori? Brant?" The woman blinked. Something flashed behind her eyes, recognition sparking like a long-dead fuse. "You made it out," she said. "Didn't think you had it in you, Wally." "Didn't think you survived Phase 2, he replied. Brant's gaze slid to Elias, then to Corey, then back to Elias again. "But this one," she said. "He was always going to pull the threads loose." They moved her backstage into the old security office. The door still locked. The vents were sealed. It was the closest thing to safe any of them had seen in days. Brant refused food, only sipped water from a cracked thermos. Her body trembled with exhaustion, but her eyes stayed locked, burning through memory. "You want answers?" she said, settling into a chair. "You're sitting in one. This theater wasn't a containment site. It was a prototype." "For what?" Elias asked. Brant leaned forward, and the tone of her voice cut like cold steel. "Phase 3. Wally's face drained of color. "That program was never approved." Brant gave a cracked, bitter laugh. "Does anything in Vale get approved, Wally?" After Phase 2 failed, they doubled down, started embedding neural anchors, back of the skull, just under the skin, memory scaffolds, emotion suppression, overrides, you name it. Marin frowned. "Wait, those kinds of implants, they were just rumors, fringe reports, nothing verified. You're saying they did it?" "And then some," Brant said, voice flat. "They tested it on the ones who couldn't fight back." She turned toward Corey. The boy sat against the wall, hands curled around his sketchpad, quiet as snowfall. "I remember him," Brant said. "He was Symptom 0, the first one to retain everything without collapsing. Resistance and resonance. They kept him under for months." Wally stepped forward, voice low but sharp. "You were supposed to flag anomalies, not preserve them." Brant stood, too quickly for someone so thin, and the chair scraped behind her. "And you were supposed to shut the project down, not vanish and take half the research with you." They stared at each other, old allies turned ghosts of their betrayals. "How many did we lose, Wally?" she asked. "Do you even remember their names?" "Every single one," he said. It was Marin who broke the tension, her voice like flint. "We fight about the past after we survive it. Right now, we work together." Brant's shoulders slumped. The fight in her deflated, but not gone. "I can still read residual threads, pulse shadows. You'll need me if we're going to reach the core node." Wally didn't answer, but he didn't object. That night, the security room dimmed into uneasy silence. Sleep took Corey at last, curled tight on a folded blanket, sketchpad tucked like armor. Elias stayed close, unmoving. Then Elias saw it, a thin scar, half hidden beneath the boy's collar. Faded, clean, too precise for injury. Surgical. Elias reached out and touched the edge with 2 fingers. Corey stirred, but didn't wake. Elias leaned back, pulse heavy in his ears. The scar wasn't new. It had been there all along. And for the first time, he didn't know who they were protecting, the boy beside him, or the thing Vale had left behind inside him. Chapter 17. Echo Codes. The signal tower rose from the city like a rusted dagger, stabbed deep into concrete and sky. Its spires blinked in rhythmic pulses, a silent metronome counting down something unseen. Beneath its base, hidden by decades of debris and misdirection, was what Wally called the threshold vault. "It's not just a relay," he said, crouched beside Elias in a burned-out alley. "That tower funnels loop memory through a buried lab, original Veil grid. If we get in, we hit the node." "Or trigger a kill switch trying," Marin said. Brandt leaned over the schematic Wally had projected from his wrist display, her breath a slow tremor. Her voice was dry but lucid. "That vault housed Pattern Division, one of the last functional departments before the Phase 3 collapse. If it's still live, there's more than data in there. There's structure." They spent the morning watching. Patrols circled in strict 35-minute intervals. 3-person teams moved with mechanical grace, faces masked, steps synchronized, drones scanning overhead for heat signatures, erratic movement, behavioral drift. "You'd think they were hunting ghosts," Elias said. "They are," Wally replied. Inside a gutted bank across the plaza, Wally tore open a corroded access panel with a pry tool and hissed under his breath. "Found it." He tapped keys into his portable terminal. Static crawled the screen, then cleared, revealing a blueprint stitched from forgotten subnet caches. Emergency maintenance ducts, one under the west wing, tight crawl space, untagged in newer scans. Brandt stepped closer. That duct was last used during shutdown drills. It bypasses biometric checkpoints if it hasn't caved in. Marin laid out a silver case on the table beside them, revealing a neat row of injectors and biojamming patches. "These will mask our vitals for about 20 minutes. After that, we light up like a bonfire." She applied them in turn, Elias, herself, Wally, then paused before reaching Corey. "He doesn't need it," Brandt said suddenly. "Not the way we do." Marin narrowed her eyes. "Explain." "Corey's signal is already fluctuating, like the tower can't read him. He's riding the edge of synchronicity, which means either it'll ignore him or lock on completely." Elias crouched beside Corey, who hadn't looked up once since the tower came into view. His sketch pad was alive with motion. Spirals, towers, shapes drawn with an intensity that bordered on trance. A low hum shivered through the room. Across the street, a drone stuttered in mid-air, twitched once, then dropped like a stone, crashing into a rusted car with a shriek of torn metal. Everyone froze. "That wasn't us," Wally whispered. Brandt was already at the window. "It wasn't them either." Elias turned to Corey. "What were you drawing?" Corey didn't look away from the page. "It was just a shape. I saw it. In my head." Marin approached, slow. "When did you see it?" "Last night," Corey said. "In the dark. Behind my eyes." Wally examined the downed drone with a scanner. It didn't crash. It was overwritten, like its command thread got replaced mid-cycle. Brandt muttered under her breath. "Imprint translation. From the inside out." "You mean he projected into the drone?" Marin asked, voice sharpening. "No," Brandt said. "Worse. The drone recognized him as part of the system." Elias looked at the boy, hands smudged with graphite, expression focused but still. His eyes were clear, not confused, not afraid. "He's not just remembering Veil," Elias said. "He's syncing with it," Marin finished. Brandt didn't respond, but the way she stared at Corey, it wasn't clinical. It was awe and fear. Chapter 18. Break Sequence. They breached the lab through the west duct, one by one, Marin first, crouched low with her sidearm drawn, then Elias with Corey strapped to his back, and Wally hauling a satchel of rigged uplinks. Brandt followed last, silent but alert, her eyes tracking shadows like they might try to speak. The corridor beyond was pitch black, but not dead. The hum of residual power curled beneath the floor, the kind of energy that remembers. "This node's still active," Wally said, "not broadcasting. Listening." The group fanned out at the junction near the central vault. Wally's rig flickered as he spliced into an old junction box. Brandt leaned in behind him. "We're past the shielding," she said, breath taut. "If he's monitoring the grid, we're already seen." The alert came a second too late. Tripwire. A pulse of red light zipped down the corridor like a scalpel through silence. Smooth, surgical, and then every screen ignited. Not just consoles, not just monitors, every reflective surface. Glass shards in the floor, surveillance domes, even the chrome of an overturned surgical tray, each blinked alive. A voice, cold and disturbingly intimate, curled through them all. "Hello again, Elias." The screens synced. Together they formed the face. Julian Marr, slick black suit, half-lit eyes, a smile as sharp as a wound that refused to close. Elias stiffened. Brandt turned away from the screens with a hiss of air between her teeth. "That bastard!" "They found us," Wally said. "He found us." Julian's voice was calm, pleased. "We've tracked you to the core vault. You're not far from the inner threshold. Leave them behind. The anomaly and the asset, that's all we need. The rest of you will be escorted safely beyond the grid. Immunity guaranteed. A full life, untouched. Free." A suffocating silence fell over the corridor. Then Marin stepped forward, deliberate, measured. She placed herself between Elias and the screens, gaze steady and unwavering. "You don't get to define us," she said, voice low and edged. "You don't extract people. You don't sort them into files. That man behind me, that's my husband, and the boy you're after. He's been hunted, abandoned, and experimented on, and still hasn't broken." Julian's smile flashed. "This is your final out," he replied. "Don't waste it on sentiment." Brandt snapped before anyone else could. "You don't offer choices, Julian. You design them." He turned. He looked right at her, through the screens. "Ah, Dr. Brandt, still following broken threads, I see. You were always a sentimental liability." Marin didn't flinch. "And you'll always be a parasite feeding off children's ghosts." Corey shifted behind Elias, fists clenched so tightly his knuckles were white. And then the lights dimmed. Elias staggered, his knees buckled, the walls breathed inward, and Theta was there, not flickering, not hidden, fully formed. Standing in the memory-bleached ruins of the lab, the floor glowed with latent trauma, red light soaked into tile and wire. Its eyes weren't just weeping now. They bled light. "Do not let him fracture the bond," Theta said. Its voice was Elias's voice, if it had never grown up, a fractured echo of who he might have been. Elias reached forward, trembling. "He wants the bridge broken," Theta whispered. "But you are the echo. You carry the map." It stepped closer, and for the first time, touched Elias's hand. Something inside him cracked, a mental dam breaking. He gasped and snapped back to the now. Marin was already at his side, her hand firm against his chest. Wally was hammering keys at the uplink console, sweat pouring down his brow. "Almost got it. Just a few more." A blast of heat surged through the floor. The screens shattered into static. Julian's face warped, pixelated, then vanished. "Scrambled it," Wally barked. "We've got 90 seconds. Move." Marin grabbed Corey. Brandt yanked open the secondary door. Elias ripped the uplink drive free from its port and sprinted. Behind them, drones whirred to life, spotlights sweeping, voices trailing behind in perfect unison. Subject identified. Echo corridor breached. Advance on all nodes. But Elias didn't look back, because for the first time, Theta had spoken, and it had called him by name. Chapter 19. No Safe Room. The corridor hissed behind them, panels slamming shut one after another in emergency lockout. Each sound echoed like a gunshot. Wally slammed a breaker switch and jammed a bypass key into the panel. "That bought us maybe 30 seconds, he said. "We've got two options. Hardwire the uplink at the central node, or lose the signal completely." "I'll go," Marin said instantly. Elias turned to her, eyes hard. "No." But she was already pulling ammo from her belt, checking her sidearm with sharp, practiced hands. Her voice didn't waver. "You stay with Corey. He's the key to this, Elias. You know it. And if you don't come back, then you keep moving." They held each other's eyes for one beat longer. No argument, no promises. Just a silent current of trust flowing between them. Two people who had learned to survive by never letting go too soon. Wally mapped out their rendezvous. "There's a convergence tunnel under the auxiliary grid. 15 minutes. If we're not there, keep going. Find the next node." No one spoke, because no one believed there was a safe room anymore. Elias moved fast, guiding Corey through the lower access chute. His flashlight cut through thick shadows. Concrete dust swirled in the beam like disturbed memory. Corey was quiet. Too quiet. His shoulders hunched. His fingers trembled, not from fear, but like they were holding something unseen, just beneath the skin. "Breathe," Elias said, low. The hallway bent ahead of them, cracked, warped, wounded. The glow of malfunctioning displays still clung to the walls, repeating loops of Julian's face. Always smiling, always watching. Then Corey stopped. His head tilted slightly. His eyes went glassy. "Corey?" Elias crouched beside him, gripping his arm. "What's wrong?" The boy blinked. His mouth moved before his awareness returned. "It's calling me." "Who is?" "I don't know. But it knows my name." Elias's hand tightened, and then the air changed. A low-frequency pulse rolled through the ground beneath them, a deep vibration that made Elias's teeth ache. He knew that sound. Servos, steps, crowd control units. From above, the mechanical hiss of gears turned metallic voices loose into the hall. "Target acquisition confirmed. Anomaly present. Proceed with force." 3 drones dropped into the corridor like descending knives. Sleek. Faceless. Their weapons armed with a sound like clocks breaking. Elias shoved Corey behind him and raised his sidearm. But he never got to fire. Corey rose. His feet left the ground, and his arms went limp at his sides. He hovered, not high, just inches, but the effect was devastating. The air around him warped, like heat waves made of data, a shimmer that bent the corridor around him, and through it. Theta appeared, not beside Corey, within him. Its form overlaid the boy's frame, eyes lit like beacons, arms open, whispering code into the marrow of the machines. The drones stopped mid-step, not paused, frozen. Their systems scrambled, feedback loops warping inside their cores. Elias's instincts overrode his awe. He lunged, grabbed Corey from mid-air, and yanked him down. They hit the floor hard. Corey gasped, eyes wide, breath ragged. "You're okay," Elias said, softer than the air. "Don't go." The drones rebooted. Elias didn't wait. He fired 2 shots, metal sparking off armor, and dragged Corey through a side hatch, sprinting into the shadows of the lower tunnel. At the junction point, Marin and Wally emerged from the far end. Wally's arm bleeding, Marin's expression tight with adrenaline. Elias met her halfway. "Corey floated," he said, breathless. "He what?" He levitated, through theta. They're sinking in real time. Wally leaned against the wall, grimacing. Construct interface is active. That's not guidance anymore. That's integration. They sealed the door behind them and descended into the convergence corridor. No alarms, no screens, just their footfalls and the sound of Corey's breath, steady but changed. The tunnel stretched forward like a vein into the city's forgotten spine. No safe room behind, only the next threshold ahead. Chapter 20. Pulse. The control node was smaller than they'd imagined. Tucked beneath the city's fractured civic grid, it looked more like a burned-out server farm than the heart of a psychic broadcast network. Wires ran like exposed nerves across the walls, their sheathing scorched. Scattered paper maps and cracked casings littered the floor, but the pulse remained, steady, rhythmic, alive. Dr. Nori Brandt moved like a ghost through the wreckage. She'd said little since the ambush, only that she knew where to go, and she had been right. Marin crouched at the console, fingers dancing over keys, jaw tight with resolve. I've isolated the signal burst pattern. Once I press this, 30 seconds of clear override. No obfuscation, just raw feed. Wally stood opposite her, knees stiff from the escape, jamming cables into the backup transmitter. No filters, no delay. Might hit like a revelation, might hit like a hammer. Elias took position at the shattered entryway, watching the corridor as Corey sat beside him, folded in on himself, sketchpad pressed to his chest. Brandt remained near the rear conduit, eyes scanning the relay frequencies on a portable reader. "The grid's woven tighter than I thought," she said. "This'll cut straight across all active subloops, public and classified. You better be ready for what gets through." "Are you?" Elias asked without turning. Brandt gave the smallest of smiles. "I stopped pretending a long time ago." Marin exhaled. Her hand hovered over the upload key. 30 seconds, she said. "We only get one window." She looked at each of them, Elias, Wally, Brandt, Corey. Then she pressed it. The signal detonated through the node like silent lightning. There was no sound, no light, just a ripple through every strand of the buried network, a neural quake through fiber optics, buried archives, forgotten loops. And above, on streets, in homes, in waiting rooms and alleys, every screen ignited, every billboard, every polished window, every reflective surface, theta appeared, whole, still, present, eyes open, face calm, not flickering, not crying, and across the city they saw him, not Elias, not a construct, something between. Recognition spread like fire in dry grass. People gasped. Some fell to their knees. Others screamed, clutching their chests, as if some long-dormant part of them had just returned. A man dropped his phone and staggered backward into the street. A girl dropped her satchel and ran with no direction. A mother sank to the ground and sobbed without knowing why. The whole city breathed, for the first time in years. And then, 30 seconds ended. The screens went black, and the sky began to scream. The roar of turbines rolled in first, not stealthy this time, not surgical. A full drone wing descended from the skyline, red lights like eyes in the smog, weapons already armed. Julian Marr's voice returned to the grid, not broadcast this time, but embedded, layered beneath the power lines and speaker loops. "You just confirmed the signal path," he said. "Thank you for lighting the way." "Move!" Wally barked, yanking the drive core from the console. They ran, back through the subtunnel, smoke chasing them like a second wind. Brandt dragged an old case from the wall, slamming the manual override to seal the vault. Corey stumbled, but Elias caught him, lifting the boy into his arms. Marin stayed at the rear, sidearm out, covering every angle. Wally limped beside her, gritting his teeth with every step. The drones descended. Beams cut the air behind them, scorching walls, turning corridors into ash. They didn't stop, didn't speak, just moved. Through heat, through gunmetal haze, through memory and warning and will. They reached the surface through a ruptured stairwell, collapsing into the shell of a gutted office high-rise. Shards of mirror glass lined the floor like teeth. Above, the city howled, but it hadn't found them. Not yet. Elias leaned back against a cracked pillar, holding Corey against his chest. The boy's eyes fluttered, not in fear, but in aftershock. They saw him, Corey whispered. Marin crouched beside them. Who? Corey didn't blink. Everyone, even if they forget later, they saw him. Theta. For one brief moment, they had pulled back the veil. They had reminded the city, and its victims, that something else had always been beneath the silence. But now the silence was gone. The net was awake again. Julian's drones were hunting, and the last true map of memory was now in their hands. This was no longer survival. This was war.
That was Arc 2 of Breathless, the first book in our Breath Between Worlds Saga. In this arc, we watched Corey, quiet, careful Corey, begin to change. The sketches, the humming, the memory that wasn't his. Elias saw it too, but Elias isn't ready to face what that means yet. And Marin, she's holding them together, for now. Wally's voice framed this arc, but underneath his guidance, there's guilt. Guilt for what the veil became. Guilt for the choices that led Elias into this mess. And maybe, just maybe, a last chance to make things right. We'll see how long that lasts in Arc 3, as the broadcasts intensify and the signal begins to take shape.